everybody. Terry Brown, all bass, no bull. And, it's funny because our paths in fishing, if you're in the fishing business, you realize you have friends that you may have known before fishing. You may have known them while you were fishing. You may have known them in the business side of things. And the funny story about this is I got 40, 45 minutes I usually take to do this. And I'm not for sure we can make it. I think with Crispin Powley, we're going to probably have enough stories and things to talk about that it will be neat. Crispin, welcome to the program.
Hey, Terry, thanks for having me, man. It's great to get a chance to catch up with you.
Well, we've crossed our paths a lot of different places: Stratus Boat, Strike King, now at GSM. But before that, we were just fishing friends.
Yep.
And you have the dubious distinction of beating my record at Kentucky Lake. I won a tournament some time ago there. I think it was BFL's. No, it might have been Red Band then. I don't remember. But anyway, I won a tournament, and I had 14-4, 14-8, something like that. And you did less than that. So and on Kentucky Lake, if you caught 14 pounds, you were way back in the back of the pack. But you had the distinction of catching less than me. So we don't have a trophy for that or anything, do we? We should have a trophy. We should have a trophy for least amount of weight to win a Red Man.
It honestly is a strange thing. I grew up here, fished here most of my life, guided fish tournaments, the whole 9 yards. And back in those days, I thought I knew the lake pretty well. Don't get to fish nearly as much as I used to, but you and I have talked about this a million times. I was working, I think, at Stratus then. So you're talking 25 years ago or so, right? And I won, I think it was a BFL. I don't think it was a Red Man. I'm pretty sure it was a BFL. But I won one out of Catawba on Barkley in May with like 13 and change. And I mean, the odds, if you'd have told me, if you'd have asked me when we blasted off, where would you place today with under 14 pounds, I would have told you in the 30s, late bottom 30s, maybe. So to win one with that, I agree. I think that took some special talent and should be recognized.
Well, you know what? This is the best part of the whole story, really, is that I won one similar. I won one in July or June, real late. It was hot as heck, fishing real shallow in Little River and throwing a spinnerbait. And the same guy that I won one a couple of weeks before that with, David Bateman, was with me. And he said, do whatever you want to do. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do. So that's what we did. But the funny part of this whole story is that after this was all over and I had and I won, which I didn't have any expectations, with all the sticks down there and on the ledges and all that stuff, you don't expect to get, 13, 14 pounds. You're going to be in the hunt, maybe get $100 check or something. But the best part is that right after you broke my record, I get a phone call from you. I broke your record. I said, what record did I ever have? Well, the least amount of weight to win a tournament. I said, well, we don't want to tell too many people that. But
hey, anybody can one up somebody with a bigger bag, but it takes. I felt like I'd really accomplished something by one upping somebody with a smaller bag.
So. And the thing of it is, on that body of water at that time, we had grass, we had big fish. It'd take 23, 24 pounds to be in the hunt.
Yep.
It was crazy, and you got all those guys down there that knew that lake 10 times better than I did. I knew that if I went out and competed on the ledges, I was going to get hit with the little boy shot at, right? Nothing. So I had like 2 spots, and I hit those 2 real quick, didn't catch anything on them. So I said, okay, I'm just going to go do what I like to do. But, you look at those guys that were there back then, those guys, John Hunt and Ray Bargee and Ron Lappin and Terry Bolton and Sean Penn and that whole group of guys, Dan Moorhead, who always won with big, big bags of fish. And I don't know how your weigh-in was, but my weigh-in was, David Bateman says to me, I think you're going to win. I'm not going to win anything, man. I think you're going to win. There's nobody bringing any fish in. I think you're going to win. I'm sure your story was similar.
Yeah, I ran from Catawba as far as Danville, about mid-lake on Kentucky Lake, with pretty decent little haul. And I caught like a 4.5 pound smallie on my first cast of the day. And I thought, man, we're off to the races. And the thing is, I just knew some guys were going to catch them, flipping them up on Barkley, some big bags. And then you had, Lashley and some guys on Kentucky that were just going to hammer them on the ledges. And so I just kept grinding and grinding and grinding. And finally, I get as far south as Danville, which is, man, it's an hour run back. And I told the young man that was my co-angler, I said, I don't have time to fish anymore. I've got to run back. I've burnt more in gas than I'm going to win, but I'm going to go get a last place check and some points. And when I pulled up to the dock, it was the same deal. It was, Billy and Sean and Bolton and Bargy and all those, Moorhead, all that Ramey, all those guys were going, you're going to win. And I'm like, man, y'all are jacking with me. I got 14 pounds, and I'll be dang if I didn't. It was just one of those days where the stars lined up and they did not bite.
So. Well, and that's such a rare thing back then. I mean, it really was. It was rare. You couldn't go out on a drop or a point or a lead somewhere and not catch a couple.
Yep.
And there must have not have been any current the day I went. I can't remember. But
yeah.
If you have current, it kind of changes the game down there.
Yeah, I don't remember the current scenario either, but it was they just didn't bite, man. And since then I've had a lot of those days. So
yeah, well, we're a lot better, a lot better now than we were then. I don't know how that works. A funny story. I had a bag almost 28 pounds on Kentucky Lake and got second.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a spring tournament, catching them on a jerk bait. Funny part of that story, Kevin Worth, who you know well, Kevin Worth, a great angler, he was a pro angler. He beat me by like 0.2 of a pound or something. I was culling 4-pounders all day on a jerk bait. Nobody had thrown a jerk bait down at Kentucky Lake then. So I go after the weigh-in, I got second, and I was miserable because I had such a good bag. But all these pros then said, I realized that maybe this was a jerk bait bite. You didn't realize crap. You were at the weigh-in when I caught the fish, and I'm dumb enough to say what I caught him on. And it was a Japanese fella. I can't remember his name. Kataro, maybe. I don't remember. He ended up winning that Bassmaster tournament on Kentucky Lake.
Yeah.
It was the week after that I caught those fish.
Is that right?
Yep. And I found these fish, or I figured this pattern out. Now, baloney, you did. You were at the weigh-in. But
I will say that old school back in the day, catching them jerking on Kentucky Lake was prime. Mm-hmm. I mean, that time of year, you caught some great big ones. They really bit that thing. Man, I start to sound more and more like all the old guys that I looked up to, but it was simpler times back then, Terry.
Well, here's the story is that we waited. Topwater bait basically is what we did. I was throwing a long A, which you know what that is.
Yep.
And I took a rubber core weight and put it on the front hook, and it always suspended with the nose down, which is what I like to do. When I throw it, I like to have that nose pointed down.
Right.
And they just ripped it. And then I will tell you also that tournament I had David Bateman again. The random draw, but that was when I pulled him the first when we took off. I said, I'm gonna catch a 5-pounder in the first place. Yeah, right. Everybody gives you, yeah, you're right. And I did. He said, do whatever you want to do the rest of the day.
That usually changed the atmosphere when you call your shot. And they've got a lot of confidence in you. I'll tell you another quick one. The very first red man I ever fished in my life, I drew Terry Bolton. And he and I kind of reminisce about this every time we cross paths, which isn't that often anymore. But Terry had a limit that day, which was it was a February or March, first tournament of the year out of Kentucky Dam. And Terry ran to a marina and had these fish. He's as good with a jig as there is. And I just fished a jig behind him all day because that's kind of my thing too. And I knew that he was going to vacuum them up. But he had 5 that weighed, 11, 12 pounds. It was a tough day. Early in the year, you can get by with that, or you could then. Seems like now, early in the year, they're all big bags. But I had 2 fish that day. I had 3 bites, and I lost one that was about a 3 or 4 pounder. But I had a 6 and a 7. The only 2 fish I boated all day, and came in third in the first ever BFL I fished out, or Redman I fished out of the back of Bolton's boat.
You're not going to find any better company than Terry Bolton either.
No, sir.
wonderful guy. He's designed a few crankbaits. I like to throw his TB. I like throwing it. And, it's a lot of fun reminiscing with Terry. He and I still talk to each other all the time.
Do you really? Well,
Yeah,
tell him
we
I
try to.
asked about him. I
I
miss
will.
Terry. I don't, man. I've been so busy with work and kids that I just don't fish tournaments around here anymore. Tournaments at all anymore.
Serious gear for serious anglers. DD26 delivers tournament tough performance you can trust. From the front to back of your boat, DD26 has you covered. DD26. No shortcuts, just badass American-made gear.
And I used to spend a good bit of time on the north end of the lake, and I miss seeing all those guys. I every now and then get around some of them duck hunting maybe, but that's about it.
I that was some of the fondest time of my life. I drove 5 hours, and that was when tournaments were on Sunday.
Yep.
So, and I would fish the Sunday tournament, drive 5 hours back, get up and go to work the next day. Sometimes I didn't know I was at work, but that's okay. And that was what we did then. That's we were ate up more than I think some of the kids are today. Now the kids today are ate up differently than what we were. And I'm sure you see that with your pro staff and a lot of the young up and comers that you have on your pro staffs there at Yamamoto GSM. You see that they're ate up, but in a different way than we were. I read everything and I still do. Pick up everything, read every quote, everything I can possibly read, all day long, every day. And I know I was misplaced because I was working in an insurance company back then. I didn't want to be at the insurance company. I wanted to be on the water somewhere, right? And that's
Yep.
That's how Bass Fan came along, Wired to Fish came along. I wrote for Bass Times, all that stuff because I didn't want to be at the office, right? So those are things that are life lessons, but they're ate up differently, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, what's funny is every now and then you run across like I've got a couple young guys that we work with very closely. Drew Gill, Jake Lawrence, just to name a couple. And those guys, they remind me so much of the hardcore guys from my youth. Because every time I talk to one of them, they're on the water, they're studying this, they're messing with tackle, and that's kind of how I was, like you were, like I was ate up with it. That's how I ended up in the industry. I fished my way into a job, and really my aspiration was to fish for a living. And then I got in the industry and, you know, kind of
Rest is
got
history.
comfortable there and kind of found my way there. And I think things work out like they're supposed to, but I agree with you. Times have changed. I don't know that they're for the better. I don't know that they're for the worse. They're just different, and that's okay. Um, I think you just kind of got to embrace. I love college athletics, and the game of college baseball and college football has changed immensely in the past 30, 40 years. I don't know, why we would expect anything different in our sport. So I think you just embrace it and try to add value to it where you can and find what you enjoy about it and focus on that.
Well, the media part of this thing is a lot of fun. I'm glad you mentioned another Illinois guy. You got Trey McKinney, Illinois guy. You got Drew Gill,
Yeah.
two studs. I mean, two as good as they are.
Yep.
And from Illinois. You know why I've got this theory about why they're so good is we've only got 5 fish that live in Illinois, and they happened to be lucky enough to know where they live. But
Right.
it's the youth of high school fishing. We started high school fishing a long time ago. Illinois was the first state to really have a sanctioned trail. I helped get that going, and it's neat to see these young kids. We had, I think, the first year we might have had 2,000 kids involved, and that's across the state. And now we got 25,000 kids involved. And the future of the sport's really them. Us
Yeah.
old guys. Not you. You're young, but us old guys like me. I'm a little bit forlorn about this to a certain extent because what's in my head and what I've been able to experience and what I've been able to see, if I don't tell someone, that's gone. And if I don't write about it or I don't say something about it or talk about it, the stories that we started this show with, it's gone. And I have a bunch of friends that really got me going. I fished all the time as a youngster, but I had a neighbor guy, Jerry Martolio, who you probably knew. And Jerry was a tournament director for BFL, Red Band, all that stuff. And he came down one day and says, "You're fishing all the time. You need to fish tournaments." And I said, "I don't want to miss the fun. I still like the fun. And I know it wouldn't be fun if I fished tournaments." Well, a dummy as I am, I went and started fishing them, right? But he was the guy that got me going on it. But you got to, all that knowledge that you have and that you have now being in the business as long as you have, we got to pass it on. And
Yeah, it's
I'm
funny
working
you
real
say
hard.
that. I mentioned Lashley earlier. He goes to church with me, and I've told him that on several occasions. Now, Sam, you're getting older, and you better share those waypoints with me before something happens to you, and they're all lost, But
You know,
no, you're right. I love talking to Drew and Jake and Trey and hearing things from their perspective. But man, I love still to sit down with I talked to Larry Nixon for a while the other night,
one of
talked
my
to
favorites.
Shaw for a while the other day. And these are, Denny, those guys that I grew up looking up to and had the opportunity to come to know pretty well. Man, there's so much knowledge, experience, wisdom that, to your point, it's too valuable not to be shared. And
Well, and you've
even
got
even if things have changed today, it's still very real wisdom and knowledge.
we've got to do our part too to keeping those guys in the loop. Denny was my first Bass Fan Radio guest. Okay, first WJBC radio guest. He was my first guest on this, and I try, and I'm not as good as I need to be. I need to be calling those guys. Nixon's one of my favorites. It was a funny story. We were up at a boat show one time near Chicago, and he walks up. He said, "Hey, could you get a picture with me?" Well, I've taken 10,000 pictures of Larry Nixon. And I said, "Why do you want a picture with me?" He said, "Because you do it the right way. You are the guy that were always here with us, believed in us, helped us get our names on the map. I want a picture with you." And I just start. I mean, you get teary eyed.
Oh
You
yeah.
feel because this guy is a hammer, man. I mean, there's nobody ever in life has been better with a plastic worm than Larry.
Well,
That Bob Cobb piece where he catches that fish down at Harrison.
I know exactly what you're talking
Oh
about.
man, he turns his head back and he looks at the camera, which you couldn't have staged it and had it been any better.
Right.
He's an avid hunter, and I try to stay in contact with all the guys. There's a guy that I'm going to reach out to here this week, Stanley Mitchell, youngest guy to ever win a Bassmaster Classic, and he's still running around. I guess that Brower says he talks to him once in a while, so I'm going to try to reach out to him too.
That's awesome.
But Stanley was a guy that we just hit it off. He would say, where I talk 100 mile an hour, he's got like one word a week. That was his style, right? He just didn't say anything. And, he and his brother Steve were in the timber business for a long time. I think he's now just coasting and enjoying life, but I'm going to reach out to him. We have to pass that information on to other people. You've landed in a couple different places, Stratus, of course, and you were at Strike King for a long, long time. Love Doug Miner, love that whole group of people. And now you've landed at GSM. And I have never seen a monster eating more tackle companies than you guys are right now. And it's all been good for you because it's kind of a portfolio, soup to nuts, top to bottom. It's all that kind of stuff. And you guys just continue. I'm watching after iCast and here this summer, and you're still coming out with new products with Yamamoto and Buka and all the other places that you've got baits. Tell me a little bit about what's shaking right now at GSM.
Yeah, I spent 17 years at Strike King, assumed that would be my lifelong gig. Loved everybody there, still do. Love the brand to this day. But sometimes seasons change, doors open, doors close, and I felt like this was a good opportunity for me to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. My passion in this whole gig is product development, number one. That has always been what fueled my fire. Since I was a kid, my dad, this is kind of odd, you may or may not know this, my dad never hunted or fished one day in his life. I read every magazine. I tagged along with any, my school friends whose dads fished, if they'd take me fishing. And then I got to where the school bus would pick me up every morning at a pond down the road. And I mean, I've just been eating up with it and started making baits in a little shed when I was a kid, pouring lead and plastic and painted crankbaits. And it's just something I've always loved. And as I've gotten older, the innovation side of fishing, how to make something better, how to make something different, how to make something new. And that's hard. I can't overstate how hard that is to be entirely original and come out with something no one's ever done before. It's the hardest thing in fishing. a lot of slander gets thrown around about companies and variations and so forth. But the fact is, if there weren't for variation in fishing, we'd be fishing a cream worm. We'd be fishing I don't even know who made the first spinner bait, but it would be pretty archaic today. We'd be fishing a creek chub. Like, man, we wouldn't have all this stuff that we like and believe in. So I've always loved taking an idea and going, hey, like you said, the jerk bait with the nose down. Hey, this jerk bait runs really good, but if I could get it to run 3 feet deeper and maybe my preference is that the bait stays head up because it looks like a fleeing, bait fish. So how do you do that? And so I had this opportunity to come over here, and I'm gonna brag on my people. I feel like I've assembled the best team in the business, and that's no credit to me. That's just blessing and knowing the right people. But our brand managers and product development, we started, Terry, with Yamamoto with one brand, and we've got 15 brands today in less than 4 years. Most of them have, to your point, been acquisitional transactions where you take Gary Yamamoto. That's the best example I can think of. Gary built this business. It's an iconic brand. He built it on quality, a custom-ish approach to a mass-produced soft plastic line of baits. And in my mind, you've seen it, I've seen it. Oh, they bought the brand, they're going to mess it up. They bought the brand, they're going to change this. It's not the same since Gary. Well, the fact of the matter is, none of that's true, really. Gary is the prime example of the American dream. He started something, he built it, he sold it, and it prospered. And what an incredible model that you wish for somebody to have success with their brand or their business. And we have done our absolute best to steward each of these brands with respect, with integrity, with heritage and legacy. And we've got a group of guys. I have a group of guys and a couple gals that are hardcore anglers. They grew up in this industry. They've worked in this industry. They fish. My product development guy's top 10 in the Bassmaster Opens right now. That's pretty hard to do. Oh, and he works a very demanding full-time job. I talk to him 4 times a day. He's in Guntersville at that Ultimate Angler deal right now. That's the kind of people we have working on projects and pouring into these brands. And excuse me, it has been a whole new world for me learning the acquisition side of things. But I say this with the greatest respect to the people that I studied under at Strike King. I'm not really doing anything new or anything wild. I'm running their playbook that I saw work so well during the 2000s, mid to early 2000s, where Strike King just was on this incredible trajectory. I got to sit in every meeting. I got to be in every strategy session, every product development project. And that's what we're doing. We're just trying to bring stuff to market that anglers can catch fish on, that have a specific purpose, that are built right, that do a job. And it's the most challenging thing I've ever done, Terry. But I promise you, at the end of the day, I'm done every day. 15 brands, trying to wrap my arms around it all: sales, sourcing, product development, marketing. I don't know how long. I'm getting gray fast. This is all within the last 4 years. But man, I love what I'm doing, and I love who I'm doing it with.
Well, we've got a secret bait that I've never seen you bring to production yet, and you know what I'm talking about. And
I have that coming in the spring, and
really,
you have a lifetime supply of them. So
it's funny because I pitched it and pitched it and pitched it and pitched it and pitched it. You and one other person, Charles Herndon, believed it. And we were down at Real Foot
Lake.
I'm standing on the back dock, and I throw this thing out, and I'm not going to go any further than that because I don't want to steal the thunder.
Yeah, keep
But
it under wraps for now.
You could count on it. But I throw this thing, and these guys go, "What the hell is that?" And Brower, who has got an acre full of them on a wall, and I gave you, I had like 5 or 6 of the ones that I've been monkeying with, and I gave you 2 of them.
Yep.
And I hope to goodness that thing comes out. I will tell you one video of how that thing works it'll be a home run. It'll work like gangbusters. There's a little bit of design. I mean, how you tune it's like beat it on the ground as hard as you can, but it's
maybe that's what I've been doing wrong. I can't get them all to run.
Beat it on the ground as hard as you can. That's how you tune one of them. But I am excited because I knew somewhere along the line my buddy Crispin would get that thing going.
That's the cool thing that I think you appreciate. Like, there have been so many products brought to market in the history of bass tackle that are special, but for whatever reason, maybe timing, maybe it was just not made exactly right, right components, right colors, sizes. But they were wonderful concepts that really deserve to be expanded on. And man, I can't wait. Now you got me super excited now. I can't wait to send you the first product. I'm going to send you one of the first runs of the production, samples.
Yep.
And we have toyed with this thing. I promise you, I've made 10 versions of it. Finally signed off on one back about 2 months ago. And it'll be a 27 introduction, or no, 26 introduction. But I can't, man. I forgot about that.
You got to remember this too. I mean, a lot of baits were designed for other species. Great example of that's a plopper, right? You call it plopper, whatever you want to call it. That thing came out. It was designed for something else, designed for musky or toothy critters, right?
Yep.
Then all of a sudden, the bass guys start looking at it and they go, "Wait a minute, I think I can catch a bass on that." A lot of things were designed for something else. If they're designed for something else, you don't feel like such a a pain in the butt to try to do it on the bass side a little bit, and I think that with some of these baits, some of them just needed tweaking.
Yep.
They just needed. I sit in my shop, which is right behind me here, and I fiddle with stuff all the time. I don't care if it's wiring, I don't care if it's a bait, I don't care what it is. I'm always fiddling, right?
Yeah, you're always working on a boat project.
Oh yeah, I'm getting too old for that crap, bad back and all that stuff. But the funny part of this is I've got baits that are probably worth a lot of money. Okay, they really are, and not in my shop, but I keep them kind of under. But like wet crankbaits, I've got Ed Chambers did me it's right over there. He did me a shadow box of only one run. There's one run of this group. He gave me 10 of them, and it's in a shadow box. And he said, "I want you to throw these." I said, "Are you crazy? I'm not throwing them. They're going to sit right like where they're sitting right now on the wall." But those kind of things, I've got old ditto gator tails. I've got whipworms. I've got, all this stuff that caught fish. In the St. Johns River where I lived for a while, this whipworm, you know what a whipworm is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, flat tail worm, doesn't look like it do anything. It's ugly as heck. But that sucker caught fish. And then I got to know Bobby and Judy Ditto, who I love to death. Great people.
Yep.
The brush hog as we know it, right, from Zoom, there was one that Bobby Ditto carved out of a piece of wood. I wish I still had the piece of wood, right? It was everything except for one thing that Ed Chambers put on it, twin tails. It had the flappers. I said, that thing won't catch crap. It's, it looked like a bucket of plastisol. And I'm like, that thing's too big. It's too ugly. It doesn't have any action. Well, guess what? Probably one of the top selling, Cinco and it are probably the top 2 selling plastics ever.
I would say so. I grew up in the part of the world. Do you remember Hugh Harville?
Yeah, you betcha.
I mean, the chicken, you remember the chicken foot?
Yep.
In my mind, that was kind of always a precursor to kind of a brush hog style bait.
Yep. Well, that Hugh Harville made all the ringworm stuff that was good.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Poured them for everybody, LaRue and everybody else. And, the thing that was neat, they always had HH on them.
Yep.
You can tell. I've got bags of them back here probably somewhere if I look around a little bit.
Growing up, there was nothing better in June on Kentucky Lake than a baby Huey. Mm-hmm. That big worm that Hugh poured. I mean, yeah, I love all that stuff. I've got a shop I tell my wife, when I die, if something happens to me unexpectedly, please get one of my friends to come in here do not sell it for what I told you I gave for it.
Right.
Like there's stuff out there that you're gonna do well on, and I'm like you. I've got shadow boxes over here of baits, and I've got the coolest thing. Where is that at? Yeah, I want to show you this, Terry. It is here somewhere. I do not see it, which pains me.
Well, as you're looking there, you remember a guy named Jack Davis?
Jack, that doesn't ring a bell.
He is Sugar Shad, all the band's
Oh,
crankbaits.
Sugar Shad. Yeah, absolutely.
All that stuff. I also got to know him a little bit. And see, when he left, everything that was in his mind left. So it's important for all of us. I've got sitting here next to me, I got a green box, I got an X15. You know what an X15 graph is?
100% I do.
The only thing that ever went bad on them, they were great. I'd love to be able to hook it back up. I can't find a belt with a stylus.
Oh yeah.
They're hard to find, or a transducer or whatever. We've got to bring some of that stuff back. The history of the sport is every bit as important as today. Tournament fishing. Not everybody tournament fishes.
No,
everybody loves fishing.
What I was going to show you, and I am having a mild panic attack because I can't put my hands on it. I told Van Dam about this other night. I went over to that Bass Fishing Hall of Fame induction deal in Springfield and spent a little time with Kevin, whom I used to work with every day for a quarter of my life. And now I just talk to him every now and then. But when he won Kentucky Lake on a Sexy Shad 6XD, the next week I went out and was fishing, just running around fishing a little Wednesday nighter. We used to fish out of Parrots Landing. And I pulled up their brush pile and I fire a plug out there and I reel it down and I hang it, snap it loose. And I caught one of his 6XDs and I've got it around here. And he was like, oh, that was the one I caught most of my weight on. And I hung it in that pile and I caught that thing and I've got it somewhere.
That's a great story. Reelfoot was a lot of things to me when we had the Strike King Riders events, but I cut a bait off of Kevin's rods multiple times, sometimes with his permission, sometimes without him. But in my office area out here is like a museum. I've got all this stuff, and none of the stuff I purchased. This is stuff that my buddies in the fishing industry said, I think you'd like to have this. And if you saw this, Crispin, it's like behind you, you got all your turkeys and all that stuff. This is all fishing crap in here. I got over here next to me a vest that I wore in 1994 or something. Looks like it brand new. It's got lunker lure and string and all, that was when we were patch pirates, right? We all had to have all that stuff.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And the vest was great. That's the best idea that ever came out of fishing. You know why? You could take the stupid thing off and throw it in a box and wear a t-shirt. Nobody knew who you were. The big guys would love them, but then they got rid of them. You remember the jumpsuits?
Oh my goodness. So that's kind of the era right before me. I kind of got into fishing tournaments in the vest era. I never had one. I was always had a button-down fishing shirt, but they weren't these, performance shirts. No. They were
bowling shirts.
Some of them were heavy weight with the embroidery on them, and the shirt weighed 36 pounds.
And then when it rained, they weigh 46 pounds.
Oh, it was terrible. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's always an honor, number one. And sometimes we sometimes overthink things. There's certain baits we overthink. There's certain, the visualization. I always tell kids when I get a chance to talk to them, I always tell them, visualize what your bait's doing. When you hop a bait, stroking a bait in Kentucky Lake that's a Larry Nixon too, by the way, and Billy Schrader, hopping, jerking that bait off the bottom. But if you don't realize how far that bait moves, then you really don't know what it's doing. And sometimes dead stickings work. Sometimes jerking a bait off the bottom works. Sometimes, but you have to be able to visualize what that bait does.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that we were taught. I was taught as a youngster. One of my greatest friends in the world was John Hunt.
Oh gosh, what an incredible fisherman!
And he won like 5 out of 6 red man tournaments, right?
Yeah.
So I'm with him. I'm throwing a jerkbait. That tournament I caught the big bag in. He said, "Can you stick around for a day or two and show me what you're doing?" I said, "Sure, absolutely. You show me all kinds of crap." So we're down at Big Sandy. This is the last story I'll tell you. We're down at Big Sandy. And he said, "You see that telephone pole?" I go, "Yep." He said, "You see that tree over there?" I go, "Yep." He said, "You see that boat pier over there?" I go, "Yep." He goes, "Get between it." So I did. We set up. He makes a cast, catches a 6-pounder. I make a cast and the bottom fell out of it. I think it might still be falling. I think it might still be falling. And I said, how did you catch that fish? So he goes, throws out, catches a 4-pounder. I make a cast, still falling. I mean, I'm 1 yard off of where the drop was. And he's laughing. I didn't figure out afterwards what was going on. He used to say, Brown, you got to make a better cast than that. I can hear him to this day, right? And the yellow flowers, they were not around for a long time.
Oh yeah, that growing up, that was like one of the seasons of life.
Yes.
Like spring, yellow flowers, summer. Yeah.
Well, the funny part of this is those skitter bugs or whatever the heck they are.
Yeah.
I'm with him, and he tells me, "Don't cast in them bugs, Brown. They won't bite it."
Charlie Ingram. If you pull into a spot and those bugs are on the water, he will leave.
Well, the best part is I caught about a 3-pounder out of him one time. I said, I think your theory just went in the bucket, John. But he had those guys were the people I always will look up to.
Me too.
My father, my dad was a guy that he went to every game I ever played in. I played baseball and basketball. I went to every game. And my dad is the most important person in my life. But all these guys were my second, third, fourth, fifth dads.
Yep.
And they took me in when I was a little kid, wet behind the ears, didn't know crap about anything, and took me along. And, I was honored. Number one, John says, hey, can you take me and show me what you're doing? Heck yeah, you betcha, buddy. I mean, that's an honor to get to go with you. But those kind of things that we've got to bring back. We've got to have that in our sport. That's what our sport's about. It's not who won the last tournament. Not who won the last tournament. I will tell you that I used to tell people all the time, the only tournament you really want to win every year is the last one of the year. Because you got 6 months or 5 months where everybody else is deer hunting and you get a relish in that win, right? And now if you win, a week later there's another winner, a week later there's another winner. And I think it's really important that we pass on this legacy of this good feeling. You and I are having a blast talking about it right here. But, in reality, there's probably 2 or 3 other guys sitting somewhere else doing the same thing right now over a cup of coffee in a coffee shop. We gotta bring that back.
The hardest part of this for me, and I wouldn't trade what I do for anything. I mean, this is what I'm passionate about. It's what I've kind of dedicated my life to being part of and learning about. And it's my people. Like I'm never out of place in a fishing conversation, and I don't care if you're in Alaska fishing for salmon or you're in Florida fishing for snook. I mean, anglers are anglers, and we're all kind of wired the same. The hardest part for me in this day and time, man, is just all the influx of negativity and the bickering and I hate to say it. I'm gonna sound like a boomer now, but it's just social media and no accountability. What it used to be, you really thought about what you said because you had to own those words.
Right.
And my pastor one time said from the pulpit, he said, a lot of people have a platform now that they haven't earned.
That's right. I always say it's living on the edge of knowledge.
I think that's what's been allowed to transform our sport and not this kind of stuff, right? Growing up, all people wanted was to learn and even if we weren't best buddies, we respected each other's ability, because you kicked my butt last month or whatever. I know you're going to do this because when it's ledge season, you're going to own it, whatever that is. And now it's just seemed like it's a competition for who can degrade others the most. And
it's funny. It's great. We have to end here real quick, but last thing I'll tell you is there's a competition in the world right now on social media who is going to be the king of living on the edge of knowledge. There's all these people who have opinions, but you know what opinions are like, right?
I do. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's plenty of them out there, but they all live on this edge of knowledge. They really don't know, but they heard somebody say something, so they do that. You're just better just keep it to yourself. Crispin, this is an honor. It always is. You and I have a blast every time we see each other. I love you to death. And if I can ever do anything for you, I will. You know that. But I still don't like the idea you broke my record. But
well, look.
Thanks for being with me.
I've looked up to you since I met you. You're one of the guys that I hold in a very small group of people that are incredibly high regard in my life and my growing up in this industry. And man, anytime you want to talk fishing, whether it's on camera or not, I'll clear my schedule and we'll do that because I needed this. So
well, I did too. You know, I'm going to walk away from here with a grin the whole day, and everybody's going to ask me what I'm grinning about. I'm going to say I just talked to Crispin. That's what I did all day. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Mm-hmm.